All right, everybody, welcome back. Here it is, the Mercyful Fate album ranking. We've spent these past few months, running through this awesome discography, very, very influential discography to heavy metal as a whole, and just fantastic stuff. Had a blast running through these, but I've got to say this was really one of the tough ones to rank because unlike most of these discography rankings I've done, usually I know kind of what, like, I usually have a favorite that is pretty hard to change. If you've had like such a long relationship with an album, and you kind of know where that's going to land, even though sometimes that does change, of course. But this one, I'm telling you, I was battling back and forth between like the top spot. I mean, this was a tough one, guys. I'm telling you, and that's a testament to how awesome this discography is. So, yeah, we're gonna run through this. Very challenging ranking, of course, but very fun to do it. All these albums and EP are great because remember, I'm including that up in here. But yeah, after this, of course, I will announce the next band. It's going to be a one and done band album before we jump into the next full on discography that will be tackling, which will, I'll announce the next time we do the album review of whatever band I tell you about at the end of this thing. So without further ado, let's jump on into this Mercyful Fate ranking. It's so good it'll make you faint, right? But number 8, and something had to fall in this spot, and this is an amazing EP. Don't get me wrong. I think it's an iconic EP. One of the greatest metal EPs out there, if you ask me. What an introduction to these guys. This was my introduction to the band. I listened to this EP before I heard anything by King Diamond or any of these other albums of Mercyful Fate or songs. This was, digging in, looking into new bands to find however many years ago. This, you stumble upon them. I'm like, well, let's just start from the beginning. And this was the one right here. So I do have a special connection with this one. It's only got the 4 tracks on it with A Corpse Without Soul, Nuns Have No Fun, which is an all-time classic. Doomed by the Living Dead is, man, that one's got to be my favorite off here for sure. And then, of course, Devil Eyes. So only 4 tracks on here, which is kind of, EPs have, as you've seen in prior rankings stuff, EPs have taken over full-on studio albums before. And have ranked really, really high up there before. This one, as much as I love it, I mean, there's so much more content on these other albums that's also great that I had to put this down at the bottom. But I do think it was worth ranking, as it is, it's all new material, as it is their first release, and I think it does have some of their best stuff on there right off the bat with, Doomed by the Living Dead and A Corpse Without Soul. I mean, all these are classic Mercyful Fate tracks. But yeah, the EP, the self-titled EP, Mercyful Fate, is coming in at number 8, as sad as it is to do that. Then, with number 7, we've got Dead Again, which, if you saw my review, I ended up liking a lot more than I ever have, actually, and I still stand by that. I like this album a lot more than the first time I ever listened to it. And I feel like over the years, this one's just going to continue to grow. But as of right now, I just got to throw it right here. It's got that fantastic, Mercyful Fate reunion 90s production on it, which is just awesome stuff. You've got awesome tracks like The Night, which is one of my favorites off here, Since Forever, Banshee, Mandrake, Sucking Your Blood, the title track. I mean, this is such a great album that I got a feeling that, considering on how this recent re-listen of this album went, I feel like is only going to continue to grow and possibly jump up in the rankings in the future. It's that damn good of an album. I feel like it's just going to take a little bit more time before it does that. Which, of course, there was another album I said kind of had the same feeling with, that I grew to love even more than I ever had, which we'll see that a little bit later on. So, number 6 coming up here. We've got In the Shadows. And, this is one that's actually dropped over the years for me. This used to be my favorite, man. I mean, at one point in time, for a good little while, this was my favorite Mercyful Fate album. I love, again, that production, that return. It's got like a spectacle kind of feel to it, it being the big return for him. You've got classics like Egypt, The Bell Witch, The Old Oak. My favorite off here, A Gruesome Time. That's one of the best damn riffs these guys have ever thrown out. I love 13 Invitations. Is That You, Melissa? I mean, there's just some awesome stuff on here that is really gone down in history as being classic for the band. But for whatever reason, this one just has dropped. I guess I've just grown to appreciate some of these other albums more. But yeah, like I said, this was at my number 1 for a long time. That just shows you how tough this one was for me, because something at number 1 is dropping all the way down to number 6 here. And which, again, is no shame on this album, because it's so freaking good. And I love just the whole, like, even with the album cover, this whole just kind of witchy feel to it. Very, very cool. And could it go back up to number 1 someday? Who's to say? Very well could. Could climb up, could drop lower. But I know, as of right now, upon this recent, re-listen of all these albums, this one's just going to have to kind of drop down here for me for now. I've just grown to kind of appreciate maybe some of these other albums even more. But yeah, number 6, the fantastic reunion album, 1993, they got back together, In the Shadows. Number 5 coming up here. We're going with Melissa, the first full LP. This one used to be like number 2 even for me. It's never been my number 1. But it used to be number 2. I used to like this more than Don't Break the Oath, which is kind of, I guess, a lot of people's opposite. A lot of people have always, thought that Don't Break the Oath is, at least from what I've seen, is far superior than this one, which I used to, I used to think this one was better than that album, but I've kind of just had a change of heart on that, even though I do love this album. If the EP, that was a great introduction to the band, this one is where I really, sunk my teeth into them for sure, and was like, okay, these guys are freaking great. I'm sold all the way. You got classics like Curse of the Pharaohs, Into the Coven is my favorite, one of my favorites of all time. At the Sound of the Demon Bell, Satan's Fall, the title track, Melissa. I mean, this is just fantastic heavy metal, borderline black metal kind of sounding stuff. I mean, obviously not in the sense of like, listening to like Immortal or something like that, right? But definitely kind of paved the way for like a lot of the lyrical content, and even like in some black metal bands' cases, like the higher pitched kind of shrieky vocals. But that's why I wouldn't go as far as say, okay, Mercyful Fate's black metal. They're like kind of were like a big precursor. I feel like they kind of influenced black metal a lot. But yeah, this album is just fantastic. What a great debut LP. Like I said, the preview was the EP for me, and I loved it. So I immediately listened to this after, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna love these guys forever, right? So, and have been a massive Mercyful Fate fan since. So we can thank that EP, that self-titled EP, and Melissa for that being just 2 amazing albums, a great debut LP. All right, and that's what now? 8, 7, 6, 5. Number 4 coming up here. And we are going to go with, I almost just swapped these, but I think we're going to have to, man. Yeah, we're going to have to, I'll leave this one at 4. This is one, the final album, 9. This one used to rank so much lower. And much like Dead Again, this album I've grown to love even more than I ever have there was just something that really clicked with me this time. And like I was saying in those reviews, that this was both this one and Dead Again were albums that I probably least listen to the least out of their discography for just whatever reason, right? Even though I've always loved them. But just this recent re-listen of this final album, at least as of today, right, until they eventually dropped their rumored album that's, they've been working on for a while, which I hope is soon, right? We'll just do an update of this thing. But yeah, that this definitely has just grown and grown on me. You got stuff like Church of St. Anne, Sold My Soul, House on the Hills, one of my freaking favorites off here. Insane, Kiss the Demon is so good. Buried Alive is possibly my favorite off here. That one is really struck me as one that I forgot about how damn good it was before coming back and doing this re-listen of the album. It's just 9 is a great album, and a great final album if for whatever reason they don't ever release another one. But like I said, that's been rumored for a while that they're going to be. But as of right now, this is their final album, and what a way to go out if, for whatever reason, that ends up being the way it is, this being their final one. Just amazing stuff. Hell, much like Dead Again, I could see 9 growing possibly even further in these rankings. Like I said, just then I literally almost just swapped this one and my number 3 favorite. So, real close to doing that, but we're going to leave it as it is right now, with number 4 being 9. Then we get to number 3 here. Time. An album that is just, man, so freaking good. This was, the first one after the reunion with In the Shadows, and I feel like on this one, they struck gold. I mean, it had a lot more of the, there was a lot more, I think, commercial success with this one. I mean, you had a big hit with Witch's Dance being one of the best songs out there for him. And like the choruses were hookier than In the Shadows for sure. And I mean, you've got Nightmare Be Thy Name, Angel of Light being one of my favorites, My Demon, The Mad Arab, The Preacher, Mirror. I mean, all this stuff on here, so freaking good. The title track, and I think that this is one of the best produced albums out of their entire discography. And they just really struck gold with that balance of, hooky choruses and everything while keeping some of that progressive kind of, time changes and epic length tunes, which I don't think there were any like really long ones on here. Some of this other, like In the Shadows, I'm pretty sure had a pretty long track on there. I think like the Headless Horseman or whatever, the Tale of the Headless Horseman, whatever that one's called, is pretty long. They didn't really seem to have as many long tracks as after with this album going forward, as like there was Satan's Fall and stuff off of Melissa that was pretty lengthy. Some stuff off Don't Break the Oath. I mean, they really it seemed like they just were like, let's get riff heavy. Not that they already weren't before, right, with their awesome riffs, but it seems like that they really made these standout riffs for this album going forward, and as well as standout choruses that just made this album super memorable for me and memorable for a lot of people, and one of their best freaking albums. Time at number 3. Number 2, guys, this was so tough. Like I said, I battled between these two. With number 1 and number 2 just going back and forth, but I ended up landing on number 2 being Into the Unknown. This album, man, I've always loved this one since I first ever heard it, and it's their 1996 album, and it's just loaded with great material. Another one that I think has some of the best production out of the whole discography. This one and Time really are kind of tied for me. But you've got The Uninvited Guest, The Ghost of Change, Listen to the Bell. It's one of my favorites 15 Men and a Bottle of Rum with the, that sick bass line. That's one of my favorites. The title track, Under the Spell, Dead Time, is such a monster riff and just amazing song. Holy Water, Cthulhu, The Mad Arab Part 2. Every song off here is memorable, hooky, badass, and heavy. And it's just some peak King Diamond, Mercyful Fate. Absolute fantastic. This one damn near crept its way into number one for me. It's been my number one before. And it just about did it this time as well. But if you're looking at, going by process of elimination, I have to give it to Don't Break the Oath, as this album is just, it's on another level, man. And there's just something magical, mystical, creepy, and just, this album influenced so much, so many bands, which, I mean, I'm not taking that into account for the ranking, right? I just actually, truly deep down feel that this is my favorite Mercyful Fate album as of now. You've got A Dangerous Meeting. Come on. That's one of the greatest opening tracks out there, man. So good. Nightmare. It's just got such a thick riff to it. Desecration of Souls. Night of the Unborn is one of my favorites off here. The Oath. Gypsy. Welcome Princess of Hell. To One Far Away. And come in the Sabbath. Or Come to the Sabbath. Just an amazing way to wrap this album up. And I think talk about memorability. Every song off here is a major standout in the band's entire discography. And I just, man, after I was jamming to this thing again and jamming into the unknown, like which one do I want to put? But I've really, as cliche as it might be calling this the number one Mercyful Fate album, it is for me. And I really feel like this is the one that I've just gone back to the most over the last, few years, I would say. As one that you just can't put it down. It's that damn good, guys. And it's one of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time. It's on people's, top lists of metal albums or whatever for a reason. It's really that good. And I think it's technical. It has that memorability of the hooky riffs and choruses. It's got great production. It's got those epic link tracks, the progressiveness, with and the technicality on a lot of these with a bunch of time changes and stuff. So it's got everything that I love about Mercyful Fate wrapped up in one just freaking great masterpiece of an album. And that's it right there, guys. Don't Break the Oath, number one Mercyful Fate album, as hard as it was to do. Maybe Into the Unknown can end up creeping back up there at some point, and like I said, that this was a very tough ranking. There was a lot of shifting around. Hell, there was the one I almost shifted right there at the last minute between number 3 and number 4, but I think I've kind of come to terms with that being my ranking, at least as of now, right? That stuff is always, it's forever changing and stuff. It's what makes it fun. You grow to love some albums more over time, and some of them kind of drop, and it just kind of fluctuates over time. So it's always interesting to kind of revisit these things. So I would love to see your guys' rankings down there and what your favorite moments in this band's career, the favorite albums of them, and which albums really stuck out to you in their discographies as being, your top spot, top 2. But I want to see them whole rankings down there. Because, like I said, for me, it was very tough ranking these things, and I'm curious to see how different these lists can be, considering the band's Mercyful Fate's discography is so freaking strong. But with that being said, guys, so the next time we're going to do an album review, it's going to be technically, I guess, under this name, the one and only album, right? But it's Heaven and Hell, The Devil You Know, right? I know since I did Black Sabbath, I didn't include that in the ranking, literally because technically the band's name is Heaven and Hell, even though it's literally like the Mob Rules lineup of Black Sabbath, right? But that's all right. I'm not gonna do a re-ranking with it included in the Black Sabbath ranking or anything. But what I'm gonna do is once we're gonna review that next time, so it'll be fun jumping back into that, the final Dio album, and his entire discography, if I'm not mistaken, because Master of Moon came out in 2008. So Heaven and Hell, The Devil You Know would be his last album. And so it'll be, kind of a bittersweet listen always. It's like, man, what more could he have brought to the table? But it's, considering his legendary discography already, but I wish that's one of them artists you just wish was still here, just pumping out stuff, right? But yeah, this will be a fun one to look into. Now, even though, like I said, I'm not going to do an updated Black Sabbath ranking with that included in here, as I don't, technically, it's not in the Black Sabbath discography. I will probably say, like, amongst, like, the Dio albums where I'd probably put it. So, stay tuned for that, guys. That'll be a fun one to look back into. Just actually got me a physical CD of it here recently, so I'll be jamming out to it. So, anyways, guys, like, subscribe, comment. Let's talk about some Mercyful Fate down there, and we're going to talk about Heaven and Hell, or Black Sabbath, right, next time. So stay tuned for that. And we'll also announce the next, big band discography in that next album review. So stay tuned for that as well. Thanks, guys.